All right, we are going now to Portland, Oregon, where so much is going on. There's basically a civil war now in the streets. Our guest is a very, very interesting man named Michael Strictland. You know him from a variety of different things that he does on the internet as a writer and commentator and journalist. Michael, thank you for joining the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Am I coming through all right?
Yeah, you're just fine.
All right, cool. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
All right, Michael, tell the people a little bit about yourself. I'll introduce you a little bit. You're now banned from owning guns, right? Because in self-defense, you pointed a gun at some Antifa people who were surrounding you.
Yes, this was back on July 7th, 2016. Now, this is before Andy No was a thing. This was before, a lot of the violence that we see on the streets of Portland had really sprung up. This is before Joey Gibson, before Haley Adams. There really was no sort of pro-Trump, right-wing thing going on. It was just, big left-wing protests. And for several years, I'd gone out there filming these things and posting up on my YouTube channel, Laughing at Liberals. Now, when I go to these things, I'm not there to argue with people or start fights or, cause a scene. I like to take a fly on the wall observational perspective and just, post stuff up as genuine as I can. So I was standing there just filming the protest on July 7th, 2016, when a bunch of these guys with the masks over their faces and their anarchist flagpoles, they start making a beeline straight towards me. They start encircling me from behind, led by a guy named Benjamin Carenza, who is literally twice my size and has a very lengthy criminal history. They start pushing and shoving me. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. I'm like, whoa, hey, don't put your hands on me. Don't put your hands on me. So I'm trying to back away from the situation. I flip my monopod upside down to use that as sort of the non-lethal intermediary sort of defensive tool there. These people continue to pursue me. They start converging on me from all angles. Another guy now starts circling around my back from the other side. So my attention is diverted to the right here when the big dude who started it all is now coming up on my blind side, and I happen to catch him out of the corner of my eye. Now, at that moment, I had every reason to believe that these guys were just seconds away from pummeling me into the pavement, robbing me of my camera gear, my computer gear, leaving me bloody, not a single uniformed police officer to be seen. So I was left to fend for myself. So I drew my firearm in self-defense. I'd been through a bunch of the firearms training, even by some of the guys who train and certify the police officers. I drew my firearm. I told everybody to get back. Thankfully, everybody stopped and or got back. I was trained to shoot until the threat had been neutralized. In this case, the act of just me drawing was enough to neutralize the threats. So after about 7 seconds, I reholstered, continued retreating, and then the police finally showed up, and I'm the one arrested. I'm the one put in handcuffs. I'm the one tossed in jail. I'm the one with a $250,000 bail bond on me, and the violent thugs who started it all are considered to be the innocent victims. I was eventually found guilty of 21 counts. 10 menacing, 1 disorderly conduct, and 10 counts of felony unlawful use of a weapon. And the violent thugs who started it all are considered the innocent victims, the brave heroes who confronted the evil right-wing guy. And so, there was a point in time where I was banned from talking to the media, banned from posting videos to YouTube, banned from going on Twitter, banned from blogging. As it stands now, after the sentencing, I am banned from filming political events, banned from filming anything at local colleges, and banned from owning guns because I am now on paper a felon of unlawful use of a weapon, which falls under aggravated assault. And anybody can watch the videos of this on my YouTube channel, Laughing at Liberals. Tell me, who's the one doing the assaulting? The violent thugs who are using physical force to prevent a journalist from covering an event? Or the guy who's on the retreat trying to avoid the conflict? So that's where I'm at. And yeah, I've been covering this stuff for years. I'm sure everybody watching this saw what happened to Andy yesterday. So that's nothing new. Violence on the streets has been legalized thanks to Judge Thomas Ryan's ruling in my case by saying that it is not unlawful use of physical force for a mob of thugs to use physical force to prevent a journalist from being in a public area. That's considered perfectly lawful according to the courts, the police, and the prosecutors.
Unbelievable. Hey, Pamphlet, we have the video that actually Tom went and got of what the Antifa people were chanting when they beat up Andy. It's the last thing I sent it to you. Do you want to play that for a minute or two to get some context? But what happened here to this great journalist named Andy No, who has been working on these issues in this area for a long time, like Michael, and he was, obviously viciously beaten. You have a senior reporter for the Huffington Post taunting him about this. You have other journalists saying that it's a good thing, that he deserved this kind of treatment, because they really are unhinged and they're going into a very violent, way of thinking and a very violent way of interacting, certainly with conservatives and with journalists in this country. So, I mean, the things that we're seeing all over the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle as well, where a little girl's parents were doxxed right outside of her elementary school by a splinter group of Redneck Revolt, which is this left-wing militant group that carries out a lot of the violent things that are often associated with Antifa. This is a worldwide network of, people who go around and try to carry out assassinations and kidnappings and all kinds of other things. So here's the clip.
Now, I do just want to specify, this is actually a newly surfaced video that came from the Charlottesville rally, which was, of course, disgusting and an inside job. You scrolled right past it there, just a little bit up. There it is, right under watch. And what they shout is absolutely, it's an insight. It shows exactly what these people are thinking.
Yeah, this is pretty wild. Here we go.
They're screaming Allah Akbar.
Yeah, see, that was sent to us by somebody, an independent journalist who is there on the ground, and they're literally shouting, Allahu Akbar, smash these Nazi scum. This is after they were literally smashing Nazi scum, or at least what they think are Nazis.
So, Tom, that happened in Charlottesville in 2017 at that, fated rally?
Yes, that's where that was recorded. And it just it was the reason why we published it this weekend, and we were just sent it to us, and all of a sudden we're thinking, oh my God, this is what these people, it's any enemy that they can unite with to destroy who they think is Nazis, which of course is anybody to the right of Joseph Stalin. They will absolutely go and do Islamist chants. And what's fascinating about that video, Patrick? It sounds like shrill women on there, shrill women screaming Allahu Akbar. They want to be oppressed. You want to bring in a real rape culture, a real authoritarian dictatorship. Bring on Islam, buddy. We will get it for you, hon.
This is just really weird. It's a hodgepodge of sinister kind of ideologies all working together. Hey, Michael, so what's going on specifically in Portland? I mean, what's going on right now as this Andy thing is happening, as, all conservatives, Michelle Malkin, are getting involved? I mean, what is Antifa doing right now? Are they marching in the streets as we speak?
Not that I've seen. Again, I'm banned from covering that sort of thing. So I actually haven't been to one of those protests since the night where I had to act in self-defense against them. But I have not seen anything out there. What I have seen in the local news, though, is they are really trying to minimize what happened to Andy and make excuses for the violent behavior of the far left, specifically Katie Shepard with Willamette Week, who's been a longtime Antifa apologist, as well as Alex Zielinski, I think is her last name, for the Portland Mercury. They're sort of doing these just these vague sort of summary write-ups about what had happened yesterday with, like one sentence, and a guy named Andy No claims was allegedly attacked or something like that. That's all they're putting. They're not publishing the video of it. They're not publishing, his face, which I'm sure everybody watching this has seen when he was, taking pictures of himself from the hospital and whatnot. So the local media is really doing their best to cover up for the violent left.
It is incredible how many local journalists out there are completely in the pocket of Antifa, not to mention local judges, which I think you have experienced. How did Portland become so bad? Because at one time, Portland was, this beautiful place, and it's kind of this oasis out in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, how did it become this communist stronghold? When did this start, and who's responsible for it?
Well, it's been brewing for several years, and I think it's important that the rest of the nation take a look at what's happened in Portland and Seattle and San Francisco, because the way I look at it, the stories that we're putting out now aren't necessarily directed towards Portland. It's directed to Indianapolis and Cincinnati and Boise and Orlando as an example of this is what happens when the far left infiltrates local governments and police bureaus. These are the sort of things that are going to happen if you allow this to happen in your city as well. So this has been brewing for quite a long time. And what we've seen over the past, 4 or 5 years is the mayor and, the head honchos at the police bureau and a lot of the state legislators, again, have been making excuses for these people, telling the police to stand down, telling the police to not get involved when this sort of thing happens. The prosecutors dropped charges on, the far left activists. There were 3 arrested yesterday. I'll bet anybody watching this, however much money they want to lose, that charges are going to be dropped on those guys. Because that's just the way it's been, going back to the election night riots of 2016 and up through the inauguration, there have been something like 120 people had been arrested at a bunch of the protests and riots and whatnot. Prosecutors dropped charges on almost all but 10 of them. And, some of them were reduced to citations where they paid $50. I think 2 people actually served any amount of jail time for numerous riots that have destroyed the city. They attack random people in their cars, smashing their windows, lighting cars on fire. Police nowhere to be seen. The mayor right now, Ted Wheeler, back in 2016, it was Mayor Charlie Hales. Portland hasn't had a 2-term mayor in, I believe, 12 years because people take the job for 1 term and they realize how impossible it is to run the city. So they give up. So the mayors basically tell the police to stand down, don't get involved, let the protesters destroy the city.
Well, as of today, there's actually a petition to demand President Trump label Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. And this has just gone up on the We the People, so it needs to get 100,000 signatures, which I'm sure it will, for the White House to respond. Demand the White House and President Trump take direct action in labeling Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. Full stop. Our nation's security and homeland are at risk until we are able to clearly define Antifa as domestic terrorists. End this madness. Well, I think what Tom has just shown us in terms of, chanting Allahu Akbar, associating themselves with any ideology that is against America or against, what they consider to be, the white Eurocentric civilization, against Western civilization. I mean, there are, Andy is not a white person, by the way. He's not a white supremacist. He's an Asian guy who was subjected to this violence. So what is really...
Andy's gay, too, if you didn't know. So they're attacking a gay Asian.
So what is their agenda, really? I mean, because it seems like they're on the same side as... Aren't they on the same side as Amazon, Jeff Bezos, and Microsoft and all these things? Or aren't they fighting for the corporations? Or, I mean, it just seems confused to me. What are they really fighting for?
Well, I've covered, in addition to covering protests in the streets, I've covered a lot of things at Portland State University, which is a breeding ground for Marxism. They hold the annual Northwest Marxism Conference there. They have student groups called the International Socialist Organization. They do, little Karl Marx teach-ins and whatnot. And I've covered many of those things over the years. And one of the things, of course, I'm sure many people watching this understand, is that every communist revolution that's taken place has happened under societal chaos of some kind, whether it's an economic collapse or war or whatever, because that's the only time that they can implement their Marxist revolution. So I believe that their main goal here, whether it's the politicians, because behind every mainstream Democrat politician is a Marxist in the closet waiting to get out. So I believe their root thing is a Marxist revolution. And in order to do that, they need to collapse American society by whichever means possible, whether it's economic, whether it's chaos in the streets, whether it's mass homeless epidemics, whether it's mass, drug addiction, mass crime, whatever they can do to stress the last vestiges that we have here of capitalism and freedom. They're going to do that in order to bring it down. So then in the societal chaos, they can then implement their Marxist revolution. That may sound crazy to somebody who's not paying attention to what's going on as I'm saying that. But as somebody who's covered these things, that's the only thing that I can conclude here, because the politicians cannot possibly be this stupid to not see what's happening and the effects of their policies. The only conclusion one can logically reach is that they are intentionally implementing these policies with the intention of bringing down Portland and society in general as quickly as possible.
Well, now, do they think that, I mean, because right now it's like, all right, well, they beat up a few people here and there, and, you know, maybe they don't get charged, and, you know, they recruit more people, and they kind of turn, you know, college kids, you know, against white people, whatever. But it's going kind of gradually. I mean, are they thinking that maybe one of these rallies, maybe one of these incidents will spiral out of control to such a degree where if the police stand down, then there can be an immediate kind of revolution in the streets if they coordinate it? I mean, are they trying to spark something like, you know, immediate in terms of bringing down the system?
You know, I don't know. I mean, here's one of the interesting things about them is there's really no official ringleader. People will talk about leftist organizations and whatnot. Antifa is not an official organized organization. They're not a nonprofit group. They're not, you know, they don't have a hierarchical leadership thing. There are people within them that are considered to be sort of the community leaders of sorts, but no one official. So that's one of the ways that they can hide behind things is by doing it all not only anonymously, but autonomously as well. Then no one can necessarily be held responsible at the very top.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Tom, what's been your experience with Antifa over the years?
You know, I'm rather blessed to live in the great state of Kansas, where we are one of the handful of states in the United States that has constitutional carry, which means you don't know who's got a gun. You don't got to have a license to have a gun. I can take it anywhere that's not federal or state property. And as a result, Antifa more or less does not exist here in Wichita, Kansas. But I went to an event last year, a free speech rally in Denver, Colorado, and Antifa was there, and me only seeing the cartoon version of Antifa via social media and to a lesser extent Fox News and the traditional media, the obsolete media, the dinosaur media. I thought, well, I'm going to make fun of these guys. I'm going to make fun of them to their face. And I turned my whole speech, it was a 10-minute speech, and I sat there and I made fun of Antifa to their face. And before I know it, they're hurling bottles of feces and urine toward me. They're screaming to kill me. They're calling me a Nazi who must die. And I honestly believe that if it wasn't for the Proud Boy escorts who got us out of that situation unscathed, I would have got stabbed by them. They are absolutely unhinged, terrifying individuals who have been told by the media, by the law, in the case of Michael's situation, they've been told repeatedly that they will face no consequences for their actions. And they believe this wholeheartedly. And I honestly think, I mean, the weapons they had, multiple people went to jail that day in Denver, Colorado. Multiple people went to the hospital that day in Colorado because they had brass knuckles, they had knives, they had blunt instruments to beat us over the head with. And the police at one point said, look, guys, if there's one more interaction, we're going to call this whole event off and we're going home. And I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute. So that works for you. You get to go home. What's that mean for me? I just get killed here? So, yeah, no, they are disgusting, horrifying cretins. At one point, we're walking away from the event. The police told us, you will take this route to get out. And I was recording, and the officer said, stop recording, no more recording. So I'm a good person. I'm a law-abiding citizen of the United States of America. I stopped recording, stopped my live stream. Well, Antifa kept their live stream going, and they were embedded into the crowd secretly. And we were all looking at this guy like, he doesn't look like one of us. He doesn't look like one of us. Well, sure enough, he wasn't. And so what was happening is the Antifa guys back home were reporting this. Now they're at this street. Now they're at this intersection. Go, go, go. And at one point, because the police were still with us for a time, this crazy woman in a mohawk, she pulls over in the middle of traffic, gets out of her car, and she literally pink and purple mohawk, insane looking, strung out individual. And she's screaming, F you Nazis, you're going to die. And this is as we're leaving an event, by the way, called Free Speech. This is what they did. We just saw yesterday, we reported on Big League Politics that the Demand Free Speech rally happening July 6th in Washington, D.C. was threatened with acid attacks. They're putting muriatic acid in water balloons combined with wax so that acid will adhere to their skin and eat away at their skin. It's going to form a film on their skin like candle wax, and it could actually enter the bloodstream and cause cardiac arrest. This is what we're up against.
Michael, well, wow, that's incredible, Tom. You know, I was chased for 5 blocks, as you remember, by a 100-strong mob after they tore down Silent Sam, the Confederate monument. They didn't care for my journalism very much. You know, when we're talking about Antifa, I think we're talking about, you know, something that really needs to be exposed so that college kids don't, you know, choose this life. I mean, I think this thing only goes forward and becomes successful or effective at what they're trying to do if they recruit as many young people, as many millennials as possible. Michael, in your experience, what is attractive to a young person? Because it's hard for me to get inside the mind of a millennial these days. What's attractive about Antifa to the young people?
You know, a lot of the kids just want to cause trouble. A lot of them are homeless. A lot of them do have legitimate mental health issues. But then you also have this strange mixture of, you know, those lower class folks and then the rich white suburban kids that seem to be pretty prevalent in all of this as well. And I don't know if they just feel guilty that their parents have some money and they live in a nice house in the suburbs and they have, you know, their college paid for. I don't know. It seems like that they either just want to cause trouble or it's people, again, trying to implement their Marxist revolution who are taking advantage of the people who are suffering from legitimate mental health issues who just want to cause trouble in the streets.
Yep. Well, this is really fascinating stuff. Pamphlet, what's your take on Antifa and, you know, where all this is going?
Man, that's a good question. It's terrifying. Those videos in the or the video in the article Tom wrote, chanting Allahu Akbar. What was it? Death to Nazis, something like that.
Smash Nazi scum. Smash the Nazi scum.
Terrifying. It's terrifying. What do we? You know, I've been thinking a lot about these people lately, like these types of people. These are people who are unreachable. They're a certain portion of the population that I think no matter how good we are at what we do, no matter how hard we try, no matter what information they get or, you know, whatever, their minds are never going to be changed. They're literally, they're beyond mentally ill, psychopathic. What are we going to do with these people, though? There, how many countless thousands of these people out there? I think there's far less than the media portrays, but still, there's a lot of them. What are we going to do with them? How do we handle something like this? This is a crisis. This is a mental health crisis. It's crazy, and it's scary.
It really is a mental health crisis, and you know, the breakdown of our society is aiding and abetting this. I mean, their numbers are always going to grow as the system becomes more oppressive. And here's the thing about, and I noticed this too about the Democrat. It's axiomatic to say the corporations are against us. The corporations are beating us down. The people at the top have all the money. We have none of the money. We are being wronged. There's something is being done to us, and the corporations are obviously part of this, and the banks are part of this. That is true. Everyone knows that, right? Now, but they're stoking that anger, and they're pointing the Republican Party, which is totally weak and defenseless in terms of fighting back against all these people, and they're pointing it against white people and so-called white supremacy, and they're finding villains for this, even though what we should be doing is having a big national conversation about what is the problem. We all know that something has gone wrong. We all know that the system is broken, but their solution is communism. Their solution is crushing America and crushing all of us and totalitarianism. And so they're using all the problems that I think they themselves have created in order to try to inflict their ideology upon us. Michael, what do you think?
I think that's exactly right. You have to manufacture the crisis to come in and provide your phony answer to deceive enough of the people, again, to have the Marxist revolution.
Yeah, I think that is probably the case. Now, Marxism has been around, I don't know the exact number, but it started getting big in the early 20th century, right? We saw the Federal Reserve come around in 1913, and that obviously helped the communists because they can print paper money. We saw the Russian Revolution. We saw the massive infiltration after World War I, and especially after World War II, of communists into our government. Joe McCarthy, of course, was correct, and now he's remembered as a madman and a villain in these history books, which have been totally rewritten by the communists in public schools, where they indoctrinate our kids, and they tell us it's mandatory that we have to put kids on the mandatory government bus and send them to these indoctrination centers. Now, I'm about 30 years old. When I was a kid going to elementary school, it was pretty bad. But nowadays, with the drag queen story hour and everything else, it's so much worse. It's so much worse. And so you have a lot of parents out there going, oh, my God, what are we going to do? We don't want to hand our kids over to these psychopaths. I mean, they're not educating our kids. These people don't know anything about history or math or any of the things they purport to teach. It is all about indoctrination, indoctrinating our kids, teaching them the transgender agenda, which they want to push. There's no such thing as gender. I mean, it is absolutely out of control. And the villain is always white men, white men, white. And Republicans, this is why it's so funny to me to still, we can't have a coarse tone like President Trump because we need to win over hearts and minds. Well, the left doesn't have hearts or minds. The radical left doesn't have hearts or minds. They are completely subscribed to this violent takeover, this plot, this coup that's going on in our country. They've got the deep state. They've got the media. I mean, it is so insidious, and they're playing the long game. They're playing the long game, and they will probably inevitably win unless we all get our act together. Michael, what do we have to do to stand up to this, to fight back against this, and to make sure that humanity is protected from totalitarianism?
I don't know. I mean, I found my role as just, being someone out there filming these things, filming what at the time, several years ago, was sort of the fringe version of the left, of these Marxist conferences that were going on at the colleges. That was sort of the fringe. That was sort of the extremist left. But now it's accepted as the norm. So, I like to sort of think of myself as a bit of an innovator of sorts when it came to this on-the-street citizen journalism stuff, of just going out and filming leftist events and posting up on YouTube, because I've been doing this since 2010. To show the world what these people really are, what they're really talking about, what's really on their mind, not the polished PR statements that the politicians or little nonprofit organizations put out, but what the actual boots on the ground people are saying and thinking. That was my role in the whole thing. I can't speak to anything else, though.
Yep. Well, there's so much going on, and I want to talk a little bit more about Antifa, but I also want to touch on this because the deep state, the FBI in particular, has been so corrupted by James Comey, so corrupted by these deep state operators who are all working under John Brennan, all working under Obama and Hillary, and we now have a situation, as I published, where there are two special agents from the FBI. They're from the New York field office. And their names are Andrew C. Brandt, special agent with the New York field office, and Anthony L. Casola, special agent. They're driving around in an FBI car with yellow New York plates, and they're going around to other states. And they are harassing Trump donors in this election. So this is not over. And this is something that I'm going to keep hammering away on. Anthony L. Casola is a big-time special agent in the New York office. He worked on the Louisville University corruption case, where they went after Rick Pitino, the basketball coach, for a supposed pay-to-play with Adidas. So he's a top special agent, and they're going around and they're harassing people who donated either to the Trump campaign or to the RNC during the Trump election. Now, we know that James Comey's daughter, Maureen, is still an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, which was led by Preet Bharara. So when we're talking about rule of law, and we're talking about how do we stop Antifa, and we're talking about how do we stop all of these criminals, we have to understand that law enforcement at the federal level has been corrupted to a staggering degree by the very leftists and the very conspirators who are supporting Antifa. And I think Michael has experienced that now with what happened to him with his experience with law enforcement. Michael, how can they ban you from owning guns? Is this a federal ban on you?
Well, it's because 10 of the things I was found guilty of were felonies.
Okay. So on a federal level, you're not allowed to buy guns in the United States now.
I guess, and I should be clear here that my case is plodding through the appeals process. So I was found guilty by Judge Thomas Ryan in Multnomah County Court, and immediately I made my intentions clear that I was going to appeal the ruling. So I've actually hired Robert Barnes to be the appeals attorney, and so that is plodding through the appeals process. The conviction was over 2 years ago, and so this whole appeals thing is a whole nother ordeal that I have to go through. And it's like life doesn't just return to normal for me. Being labeled a felon, car insurance goes up. It's hard to find a place to live, hard to find work. People pass judgment on you. I had to do 240 hours of community service work. I was sentenced to 40 days in jail. Life doesn't just go back to normal when it's all over with. I'm still on probation for another year. I have to check in with these probation officers once a month. I need to pay this $45 fee all the time. They can order me what to do and what not to do. I need to get special permission from them to do certain video projects. I do professional video for a living. And I need to get permission from the probation officers to cross state lines. So I'm in Portland, which is just south of the state lines to Washington. I need to get permission from them. If I have a job in Washington to do, which I did yesterday, actually, I have to get permission from them and a little permission slip filled out in order to go to Washington to work. So, you talk about, the judges and the legal system and whatnot. I think one of the things, from what I gather, Trump is doing this, is starting to clean out the judges and whatnot, because laws can be written into place. You can have legislators and certain legislation passed, but they intentionally make these things as vague as possible on purpose. That way the politicians themselves don't have to be held responsible, and it's all up to the judges to how these things are interpreted. And then so you have all these left-wing judges who have infiltrated things, who have been appointed by, especially in Oregon, all the left-wing governors over the years. So they're the ones who are doing the bidding of the radical far left. And so I think taking back a lot of these judicial positions is one of the keys to, saving the country.
Yep, that's very true. And Trump has actually appointed 109 judges now successfully. His batting average is second in history only to George Washington. So that is a big, big thing. And of course, we know that we've got Brett Kavanaugh, who's great, and also Neil Gorsuch on the Supreme Court. I think that the 2020 election is ultimately going to be decided by the Supreme Court, because we're going to see these communists like Stacey Abrams did in Georgia, throwing anything they can at the wall to try to drag out the process and, get recounts and claim voter fraud and claim we really won the election. And this is just par for the course now. These people are at war against our civilization, and we're sitting here like quislings. Not us, but certainly the Republican Party is sitting here like quislings. Aside from Trump, is there any Republican who's really fighting in a real way, on a real level? I would say Ted Cruz probably comes the closest, but he's still kind of worthless in the grand scheme of things. And, the Republican Party is just a joke. They don't want to offend the media. Meanwhile, the media is on the side of Antifa. The media's entire mission is to destroy us and to bring down our country and our civilization. I feel like we're sitting here like sitting ducks. We're looking at Islam, which is just taking over. We're seeing the communists aiding and abetting Islam, even though, these white liberal kids need to realize that they're going to be the first ones killed when Islam actually gets into a position of power. The communism and Islam are not going to go hand in hand. Islam is going to win out at the end because it's the stronger force, and it's more radical and it's more violent. So we are just our entire civilization being taken over, and we're watching the Republican Party almost refusing to exist as a political party. I mean, in Washington State, are there even any Republicans? I mean, how do people even, Michael, go through the day and like convince themselves to be Democrats or convince themselves that any of this is moral or right?
Well, I know around here, and I'm in Portland, Oregon, not Washington, but it's very similar cultures. I know that they're very big on identity politics, like especially with the LGBT communities. You know, that is probably the most powerful, you know, group of sorts in the area here. They can pretty much run anything. You know, I call it the oppression Olympics scale, and at the very top right now are transgenders. You know, so they're the biggest victims, but they also have the biggest power because whoever cries the most, whoever protests the most, whoever is the most violent and the loudest voice, they're the ones who get rewarded by the local politicians. So maybe that crowd, maybe, I don't know, maybe the Democrat politicians are the ones who are most easily manipulated. I don't know. I know the environmental groups are very strong around here, as they have been for a long time. And again, that's another thing that the Democrats sort of placate to. So to answer your question, I don't know. Everyone's insane. There's something in the water.
Well, I really hope that this agenda goes forward to the point where the entire U.S. ladies soccer team gets replaced with transgenders, and then Megan Rapinoe will not have a job anymore because, as we see, transgender men are taking over women's sports. I was never a big fan of women's sports to begin with, though I do enjoy women's beach volleyball. Tom, tell us about what is going on with political, I mean, where do you see political correctness going? I mean, what is the end goal? Obviously, the end goal is the destruction of our country, but in the short term, I mean, what are some things that we can kind of expect for our society to start looking like?
Well, I honestly think, Patrick, that it's going to we're going to get to the point where, and we already are in a lot of ways, because this is all about thought control. That's what political correctness is. It's thought control. It's control over what's in your brain so you don't say it. And I think that I'm a test case for this because my Facebook page got in per Trump, almost 350,000 likes, and I'm capped there. They won't let me grow anymore. But I am in the habit of not saying certain words, and I won't repeat them on this broadcast because I don't know the rules for YouTube very well. But there's certain words like the T word, which some people use for the transmission in their car, the R word for somebody who is mentally deficient, the F word for what Milo Yiannopoulos called his tour in 2015 and 16. These are words that if I say them in public, if I say them to my friend in a private setting on a private phone call, I get a little, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I'm looking around like, wait a minute, what did I do? What did I do? Am I doing something wrong? Am I going to get jumped? Where's Zuckerberg's goon squad? They're supposed to come arrest me for this. And that's what this is all about. They want to change what is permissible to say in public. It's not just going to be on social media. It's not just going to be when you're recorded. And it's not to protect people. It's to change the way we think. That's the real goal here. And I do want to say, when talking about the Republican Party in general, it is absolutely abysmal. But President Trump said something while I think it was when he was in Japan, but he might have been in South Korea. A reporter said something about, well, don't you worry this is going to offend people? And he goes, I'm not worried about offending people, especially the media. I would think you people have figured that out about me by now. I'm not worried about offending you. And that is why people are flocking to him. And he's telling the truth. It's why Patriots Soapbox is such a phenomenal platform and why it's so incredibly popular to the point where I just got a message from a business contact where he says, I'm watching you right now. That's awesome. And I had no idea that this guy watched Patriot Soapbox. It's the reason why people are flocking to these individuals, these news sources. And this is something that is bared out across history. I know a person who did a look at the wider Christian church, not just Catholic, not just Protestant, but Christianity in general. And what she found is during time periods where the church is going more traditional, where they are adhering to what the Bible actually says and they're not letting the Pete Buttigieg of the world determine their theology, that's when the church swells. When they get people who are telling the truth, the honest truth and nothing but the truth, that's when people swell to you. And we've seen that with President Trump. He came down the golden escalator in 2015, and he said they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some of them maybe are good people. And people flock to him. Meanwhile, you have the Quislings out there who are afraid of the media, afraid of being called a bad name, and nobody knows who they are. You know, there's 2 or 3 senators who I can name off the top of my head, and I do this stuff for a living. You know, there's Cruz, there's Hawley, there's Jordan, so there's just, and he might be representative. There's just a few of them. And that's because these are the ones who are willing to call out the 350,000-pound elephant in the room. And so I have a little bit of, that's my white pill that, you know, I look and I say, but look, people who tell the truth, they're very popular. They get taken care of. Everything works out in the end. And Michael, I hope your legal situation, Robert Barnes is a phenomenal lawyer. And I hope that he is able to push through that appeal. And then I hope you get the hell out of that state. I don't know what to tell you, man. But again, I look at this and I say, this is a person who is fighting. You know, I like what Tommy Robinson says. I'm not a victim. I'm a target. And you are obviously a target. And you're obviously pushing back and fighting back. And I think that you'll be taken care of because people will flock to you. I'm watching the chat on Patriot Soapbox, and everybody is obsessed with you now. They're saying, we've got to, what is this guy's appeal status? What do we need to do? How do we help him? What do we do? And that's what gives me a little, that's what makes it so I can sleep at night. So I don't think the world is going to end in hellfire.
Well, that's good to hear, Tom. You know, I want to say one more thing before we get back to Michael's story, which is this. Have you noticed that one of the effects of all of this political correctness is that the Republicans and the conservatives then say, all right, well, we've got a former liberal. We've got, a very flamboyant homosexual. We've got, we've got all the interest groups, right? And then there's some kind of novelty to the fact that they're Republicans. Then they have a brand, and it's like, oh, I mean, that's fine if they're conservative, fine. But like, why does that entitle to be like more of a Republican? Like if you were a liberal 2 years ago, you're probably not very bright. I mean, I'm glad that you had a transformation, but just because you were a liberal like a year ago and then you changed to a conservative, you shouldn't become William F. Buckley, right? I mean,
I agree with you. And I call it grifting. I think that's what it is. I'm not going to name any certain organizations, Sir Charles Kirkland. But, you know, there's a few groups out there where they're profiting off this. They get a gay Republican. This one's going to be the Arab Republican. This one's going to be this Republican. And they use it. And I don't think normal people actually care about this. I think that it's all pushed by social media, because social media, that you look at the organizations that utilize this, you look at the individuals who utilize this, and like you say, they're not really they're nominally pro-Trump. They say, oh, I love President Trump. President Trump is so amazing. But then you look at what they advocate, and I will call out Charlie Kirk on this. He had that debate with Tucker Carlson where Charlie Kirk is advocating the economic system that has failed us and enriched the uniparty for the past 100 years. And Tucker Carlson is saying, well, maybe we should think of the country like our family. Maybe we should protect our family before we worry about unfettered capitalism for thee, but not for me. And Charlie Kirk, literally at one point, he goes, no, it was embarrassing. And that's why video of the event, you have to go, and it's some guy who was filming it on his iPhone. The video of the event was never released. And so they are pushed on social media. They get extra juice, while those who tell the truth get the juice removed. And I think that's why they exist. I don't think normal people fall for it. I don't think normal people are like, oh, it's a transgender, demi-queer, quasi-romantic Republican. Oh, my God. I don't think normal people care about this.
No, but then the very same interest groups from the Democrat Party are then promoted, by the Republican Party on social media because they have the same exact agenda. It's just that in the Republican Party, it's under the guise of novelty. Like, see, we're not racists. Well, nobody said that you were, but that still doesn't mean that we need the transgender Republican senator from. I think that may happen at some point, which is not to suggest that anyone who has been first lady, who may or may not be running for president, has anything in their closet to hide. By the way, Tom, pure conjecture and speculation that there may have been a transgendered person in politics. But Michael, I want to get back to you because people are very tuned in. First of all, tell the people where they can find you and reach you to help with your story. And secondly, are you allowed to travel with other guys who have guns so you can at least be protected.
Well, again, people can see the latest on my case. I post videos about it up on my YouTube channel, Laughing at Liberals, youtube.com/Laughing at Liberals. I'm also on Twitter at Laugh at Libs. Profile icon is an old black flip camera, little pocket camera. I actually do. I do have my own legal fund now that I've started on PayPal. Strictland Legal Fund at gmail.com on PayPal. We're all up to speed on the lawyers' bills for right now, but we have to raise some funds to do these public records requests because one of the things that's popped up is we're pretty sure that they've hid documents from me about me during the trial and through this whole thing. The only way that we can get those is to file these public records requests. And then they've denied us these requests. So now we have to hire another attorney to actually go through some different legal rigmarole to actually get these documents that they've hidden from me about me that they're supposed to reveal during the case. I can't go into too many details because I don't want to reveal too much strategy on here. As far as being around other people who have guns, as long as the gun is not in my possession or accessible to me. So if I am at an event of some sort and there are some people who are concealed carrying and I don't see their guns, or even if I do see their guns, it's not in my possession, it's not in my control, I don't have access to it per se. So, you know, as far as I understand, I'm all right in those regards. Now, say I'm riding in someone's car and they want to put their gun in their little center console. No, can't do that. If they want to put it in their glove box and I'm sitting in the passenger seat, nope, can't do that. So if I'm riding with someone, it has to be on their person and not accessible to me.
Wow, interesting. Well, we will try to make sure that you're protected, Michael. We have many networks out there, and we don't want you to be unarmed because obviously, you know, if they know that you're unarmed, then that weakens you a little bit. But I don't think you're weak, and I think, you know, you take security precautions. But we're going to help you out too, and hopefully, you know, within the letter of the law, make sure that you're protected by some guys with firearms. You know, that's really where we're going. And I encourage everyone out there to buy guns. I think guns. I love guns. You know, there are different laws, but, you know, for the most part, in most places, there's really no limit on the number of guns that you can buy. And certainly that's true in some places. And so, you know, I just encourage everyone to buy guns, to own guns, to train with guns, to make sure that your family members have guns. Because Antifa and Redneck Revolt and these left-wing militia groups, they are buying guns. And one of the things that they stress is that, you know, if something does happen, if their Marxist revolution does happen, the right-wing militia guys, the people on our side, are the ones who have most of the firearms, right? And they want to correct that. So they're hoping that the system kind of keeps going for as long as it can so that they can stockpile weapons as well. That they're finally starting to do that. They're starting to catch on that being, you know, a gun-free coffee shop patron and a hipster and, you know, just listening to indie rock is not enough. So now they're starting to stockpile firearms. But obviously our side is still, you know, in the lead by far. So we do have I do want to get to a couple of calls before we get out of here. But Karaoke, are you on the line? Karaoke. Do we have Karaoke on the line?
One more try. Karaoke, are you there, sir?
Hello, I'm here.
Hey, sir, how are you?
Hey, is Michael still there?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
I'm in Colorado, but I was one of those, I want to get a talk and my throat's plugged up. One of those that stood out at Patriot Corner during the Bundy trial. I'm very familiar with what's going on out there now. I want to put a bug in your ear. It came out today or a couple of days ago on Daily Caller. Ted Cruz wants the FBI to investigate the Portland mayor for what's going on out there. So I think you might want to contact Ted Cruz and get something going that way.
Yeah, I did just see that headline earlier today, and if Cruz or anybody who is a staffer for him is watching or listening to this, I do have a fair amount of information on what's happened in Portland over the past several years. I mean, in addition to filming protests and filming all that other stuff, I've done a decent amount of investigative journalism work as well, and I've only revealed a quarter to a third of what I actually have. To protect my own butt, I actually have a bunch of information that I keep in what I call the dead man switch vault. So should anything unfortunate happen to me, a bunch of information that I have on a whole bunch of these players that have been involved in me, with my case, and some of the Antifa groups and the district attorney's office and in City Hall. All that information would start to go public if something unfortunate happens to me. So I do have a lot of that information, and I can always get more. I'm skilled at finding the dirt. So if anyone from Ted Cruz wants to get in touch, I'll be more than happy to help out.
That's great. That's great that you do that. I do that too, of course. So there's a whole lot of information that would be released immediately upon my death, and also sent to authorities. So I think, you just got to protect yourself anyway.
It's on my end. I don't know that's on my end. I'm getting a lot of breakup where I can't hear the audio, but I got the word out. So thanks, guys. I'll talk at you later.
Thank you, sir. All right. I like that guy. See, these are the kinds of people who I really love. And, people who watch the show, I hear from truckers. I hear from, militia people. I hear from people who really know what's going on, right? And the effete, liberals and the urban metropolitan areas think that they're smarter, but they're not, because they are Quislings. They're rendering to the so-called red-green alliance between communists and Muslims. And it's the real patriotic people out there who own guns and who work for a living, who actually know what's going on and who are actually prepared for what's coming. And that's why I think that if there was some kind of chaotic situation where anarchy happened or the system went down or the grid went down, I think we would be fine because there would be a proper chain of command that would be established just by virtue of the fact that some people have been preparing to in such a situation. And there are a lot of good people out there. I just want to stress again how much we love all of the viewers and all of the callers. Tom, do you have any last words before we wrap it up here tonight?
I was going to say that's another thing that helps me sleep at night, because you get callers like that. You talk to people on the street. I just the other day happened to tell a guy, yeah, I do a political thing, and I'm very vague because I don't want to get stabbed or have to shoot somebody. And before I know it, the guy's saying, oh, you got to come in here. No, I'm fixing you a drink. This is amazing. I can't believe it. The normal people out there tend to agree with us, and not everybody can make it their life. Not everybody can do what we do. And frankly, I don't want everybody to do what I do. I think that society would fall apart, because even though we are the good journalists, we are the real media, we tell the real truth in our news. No, I'm a weakling too. Because it's kind of a byproduct of the trade. You can't sit there and call yourself blue collar when you're going on Patriot Soapbox necessarily. It just doesn't work that way. You get busy, you get bogged down. But you talk to real human beings, and it is a massive refresher to see how much the average pro-Trump conservative, the average American, and I don't include Antifa in that category. I think that they should have their American citizen status stripped. If they want to go live in a communist dictatorship, we can give them a first-class ticket to China. But it is refreshing, and it helps me sleep at night to talk to normal human beings who know everything I do and don't even do it for a living.
It is weird how they're over here enjoying our standard of living and yet disparaging us. It's like a guy showing up to a party and being like, this party sucks. It's like, well, go. Who invited you?
It'd be like if you and me moved to Japan and we immediately say, all right, I need some welfare. And why are you guys taking your shoes off? Why do we sit at a little table on the floor? This is terrible. We need chairs. I'm keeping my shoes on. I'm keeping my cowboy boots on. And if you don't give me welfare, then you're an anti-white, xenophobic, racist Japan.
Bigot.
Yeah, bigot.
You bigot.
All right, Michael, parting words for the people?
Go out and film the politicians in your area, film their town halls, film the crazy stuff that happens at your local colleges. Get the truth out there about what's happening.
Sounds good to me. And also, of course, vote for our Greek president,